There's this incredible transformation happening in India right now, and it's all being powered by its startup ecosystem. But this is way more than just a business story. We're going to dive into how this startup explosion is actually part of a much bigger plan, a grand strategy to completely change India's role on the world stage. Let's break down how it all works.
Okay, to really get a sense of the scale we're talking about, just look at this number. Back in 2016, India had maybe 500 recognized startups? Today, we're looking at over 200,000. That is not just growth, that is a full-blown explosion. It's a total paradigm shift, and it's happening incredibly fast.
So, how did we get here? And, more importantly, where is this all headed? Well, first, we're going to look at the sheer size of this boom. Then, we'll dive into the really critical pivot towards what's called deep tech. After that, we'll see how these startups are breaking into strategic frontiers, what the government's surprising role is in all this, and finally, we'll talk about the ultimate goal, making India indispensable to the rest of the world.
All right, first up, let's just try to wrap our heads around this unprecedented boom. What does it really mean when an entire entrepreneurial ecosystem gets built, practically from scratch and on a global scale?
Well, for starters, it means this. India is now officially the world's third largest tech startup ecosystem. Now, this isn't just some vanity ranking. What this really means is that the country has become a massive magnet for global talent, for capital, and for ideas. This kind of scale gives it a whole new kind of economic gravity in the world.
But here's where the story gets really, really interesting. It's not just about the number of startups anymore. It's about the kind of startups. We're seeing this huge shift away from the usual consumer apps and towards something much deeper, much more foundational.
Think about it. Just a few years back, the Indian startup scene was all about e-commerce, food delivery, consumer services. But fast forward to today, and the whole game has changed. The focus is now on deep tech. We're talking about companies built on serious R&D, companies creating core technologies for things like AI, biotech, even semiconductors.
And this isn't just some small trend on the side. The smart money is pouring in. In 2024 alone, investment in these super R&D heavy deep tech companies shot up by 78%. That is a massive vote of confidence from investors who are betting big on the long-term value of these complex ventures.
Let's zoom in on a really hot area, like generative AI, to see what I mean. Yeah, building simple apps is one thing, and sure, they got a lot of funding, but look closer. Almost 40% of the money is going into the really hard stuff, the services, the infrastructure, even building the core AI models themselves. This shows an ecosystem that's not just using technology, it's building the entire tech stack from the ground up. And this is where that shift to deep tech leads to something I think is just incredible. Startups are now pushing into what you might call strategic frontiers. These are sectors that, for decades, were exclusively run by the government. Just take a look at space and defense. In just a single year, we saw over 300 private new space startups pulling more than 1,000 crore rupees in funding. We're seeing pioneers like Skyroot and Agnicol actually launching their own rockets into space. At the same time, in defense, you've got startups building everything from advanced drone systems to electronic warfare tech. Think about what that means. It's completely changing who builds a nation's most critical technologies.
So you might be asking, how did this all happen so fast? Well, the answer really lies in a huge, deliberate shift in the government's role. It's moved from being a simple regulator to being an active catalyst, one that's intentionally trying to de-risk innovation to pour fuel on this fire.
The philosophy behind all this is something called the entrepreneurial state. Now, the main idea isn't for the government to try and pick winners. It's about creating the conditions for winning. The state itself starts to think a bit like a startup. It takes calculated risks, it learns from its failures, and it coordinates these huge, complicated missions, like trying to build a whole new semiconductor industry.
This quote right here really gets to the heart of that mental shift. For decades, government action was often slowed down by this fear of what happens if something goes wrong. This new way of thinking basically says, look, innovation means some things will fail, and that's okay. Seeing those failures as part of the learning process, not as something to be punished for, is what allows for fast, bold decisions.
And this isn't just a philosophy. It's being backed up by real, tangible actions. Do startups need cash? Boom. The government created funds to provide that risky, early-stage capital. Are they drowning in red tape? Okay, let's create lighter rules and single-window agencies to cut through the bureaucracy. The whole goal is simple. Let entrepreneurs focus on building stuff, not on filling out forms. Okay, so now let's zoom all the way out and connect all these pieces, because this entire startup transformation is a crucial part of a much bigger national strategy to achieve something called strategic indispensability.
This whole strategy basically unfolds in 3 stages. The first stage is defensive. It's about substitution, building up your own domestic capabilities so you're not too reliant on other countries. The second is about resilience, creating buffers so you can handle global shocks. But that final stage, indispensability, that's purely offensive. That's about becoming a central player on the global chessboard.
So what does strategic indispensability actually mean? It means you integrate yourself so deeply into the world's supply chains for critical technologies and goods that the world starts to rely on you. By becoming a critical node that other countries simply cannot go around, you gain what's called reverse leverage. And suddenly, you're not just a taker of global rules anymore. You're in a position to actually help shape them.
And that brings everything full circle. The startup boom, the pivot to deep tech, the role of the state, it's all pushing towards this one massive goal. India is right in the middle of this historic pivot, moving from a nation that mostly adopts technology to one that creates it for the whole world. So the big question is this: is this the moment its startup ecosystem becomes the world's next truly indispensable engine?